I got a call the other day from a lady who said that her elderly mother's just becoming impossibly demanding. She wants all the time she can get. Come help me do this or that or visit or whatever. She could pretty much spend her whole life attending to her mother's needs, even though she's active and alert and doesn't need like assisted living or any of that. She's just getting older and lonely. So she said, how do I deal with this? Because it's just making my life impossible. That's all I do is go spend time with Mom. So I suggested give what you can to your mother and what you want to. It turns out that often the reason that people demand a lot of time from people is that people give the time somewhat begrudgingly. I mean, just slow down, close your eyes, whatever. Imagine somebody demanding your time, coming up to you and saying, you have to give this to me right now. How willing do you think you'd feel? That's the problem, is that demanding people get that kind of response from everybody. So everybody gives them the time and the things that they want, but they do it with this attitude of, when is this going to be over? And so the person who's doing the demanding does never really feel seen or cared about. 15 minutes of eye-to-eye, heart-to-heart listening and loving and touching is worth much than hours of sitting and listening to somebody drone on and on and on and tell the stories that you've heard 1,000 times. Really, this works for old parents. This works for little kids. It works for everybody. We want to know that when somebody's paying attention to us, they really care about us. It's the love we're looking for, not the time and the attention. It's something that very few people understand. So she wrote back, the lady whose mother was demanding. She said, I just wanted to say how grateful I was for your reminder of the different way that I can love my mother. My pleasure. She continued, I followed your suggestion the other day. She asked me to give her some time to go and help her to do some business downtown. And I offered to meet her at the business, and which I had suggested, because if you meet somebody at your home, for example, you're dead because they're going to stay till you go to bed and then probably come in and lie next to you and keep telling stories while you're trying to sleep. So you meet them in a public place where you're free to get up and go, or you meet them at their house where you're still free to get up and go, although it's a little harder there, but only a little. So she said, I met her at the business and I told her that I would be leaving as soon as we were done with whatever the transaction was that she was helping her with. And I knew that she would be disappointed if I didn't spend more time with her. Well, good for you to offer freely what you did. When I got there, she continues, I did as you suggested. I just poured on the love. I greeted her warmly. I hugged her. I asked her all about her week. I listened very attentively. I told her how much I loved her. I touched her. I hugged her a lot. Brilliant. We completed the business task in 15 minutes. Now, for everybody who's listening, notice she accomplished all of this, touching and looking and hugging and all of that stuff in 15 minutes. Then she continues, later I received a message from my mother saying how grateful she was that I had spent so much time and had helped her and assisted her and how much she loves me. She does not normally do that when I do things for her. And I'm chuckling because this really does work. What people want is love. People love to be loved. It is a myth, a terrible myth, that more time is more love. I've read books that have said regarding parenting, good parenting means time, time, time. And then there was a little flurry of books for a while that said it's about quality time. And yeah, and then so parents would try to make it more quality, and they would do things participating more with the kid. It's love. It's not the time at all. Both sets of books, or both approaches were wrong. So you gave to her freely. It was obvious that she felt it, and that's what counts. You continue. Usually she messages straight after I've spent hours of time with her, asking her, well, when are we going to meet and do something tomorrow? In other words, she doesn't feel it or appreciate it. She's constantly clinging, and it feels suffocating. Anybody who's listening to this, is this ringing a bell with you? There are people in all of our lives who are constantly asking for more. And it's because the quality of what we give them isn't very good. So of course they want more. She finishes and says, I'm going to stick with doing it this way. Yeah, you think. I know I feel loved with a 10-minute call from you once in a while. She's talking about me. I don't need you to be there helping me fill all my waking hours. And my mother doesn't need that from me either. You'd think I would have learned the lesson from the example you set, but I didn't. I always thought that she needed my every waking second. She just needs to feel loved, and that's not measured in time. That's pithy enough to be an aphorism. She just needs to feel loved, and that is not measured in time. Beautiful. You're a genius. Here's somebody who says, I've met a lovely man. His name is, I can't remember, Max, we'll call him. He's a simple man with simple values. He doesn't earn a lot of money, just enough to live on, and to take care of his kids, who he shares half time with their mother. Simple is good. This woman who's writing this is relatively wealthy and not especially simple, as in not complicated, not simple-minded. She's bright, active, capable of doing a lot of things, and has a lot of resources. Society often values complex and especially mysterious. I've met a man, he's so mysterious. Oh, run. But those things involve way more maintenance and often hide problems. Just sort of parenthetically to those who are listening, this woman was married before to an exciting and wealthy man. I mean, my goodness, this guy just lived a kind of rock star kind of life, and it turned out horribly. Then a series of other complicated, exciting, and interesting men, and it all turned to nothing. She continues, he feels like he is the one who's not good enough for me, but I feel lucky because I see his real value. And I feel like he's capable of loving me like no man has been able to do. Oh my, that would make me very happy for you. And those of you who are looking for a partner, listen to somebody who's smart, somebody who's done the dumber ways and has arrived at the smarter way. Let's see, I want somebody who's really interesting and handsome and wealthy, and those things all go away. This woman has identified she wants somebody who has simple values, plain values, isn't complicated, and can love her. That's genius. She continues. He worries that he's not manly due to the fact that he just has a regular old job, nothing that you would brag about to everybody at a party, no big or exciting or wealthy thing, and I don't care, but he does. I want to be with him, and if I feel like it, then I can pay for some things instead of him. So how do I get to be okay with that? He says it's the man's job to take care of his woman in every way. I don't care about that. I'd rather be taken care of emotionally. This is really simple. What you two want is a real partnership. Yes? In fact, you can conduct this conversation with him if you want to. You can read to him this email, and then he'll know exactly what you're talking about. You don't need to do it secondhand. Partnership is the thing that determines whether a relationship succeeds. If two people make decisions separately, if they don't do things as partners, the chances that they're going to fall apart are very high. So what creates partnership? Pay attention closely, Max, who's going to be reading this or watching this particular section of the video later. Two people bring everything they have to the partnership and freely give it entirely to the other person and to the partnership. There is no mine and yours. There's just ours. And by everything, I mean everything. You both bring all the love you have, your pain, your fears, your flaws, your mistakes, your money, your body, your talents, everything. And it turns out that it's then all thrown into the pot, and then it's all ours. We don't distinguish where it comes from. For example, in my partnership, the checks are usually written to me. So I could easily, I suppose, say, I make the money. It wouldn't occur to me in a million years ever to say that any part of that money, much less all of it, is mine. Everything is ours. And you don't differentiate. You don't say, well, I bring more of this and you bring more of that, and we don't assign point values to these things. You just bring it all and dump it in the pot. And if he has a thing about money, that's going to interfere with your partnership, and he needs to know that. He needs to know he needs to give up this false old world, supposedly gentlemanly thing, which is really just prideful, that he should be taking care of you financially. Who says? And it doesn't contribute to happiness. He's got to see that. Joint bank accounts, joint everything. You share everything. Now, I wouldn't share everything until I was pretty sure I wanted to live with that person for all of the rest of my life. But once you are, that's what partnership is. You continue. I've been so poorly lately with the flu, and he just came over and he just took care of me. Took care of me, took care of the dogs, took care of my son. He took care of just all the boring stuff around the house. That has never happened to me before in my life, including the times I was married. I felt cared for, and I really couldn't do anything for him in return. So it pretty much had to be unconditional. What a change that made for me. When I was in bed, I thought about this, and I remembered what somebody told me in real love, that once you become the person you need to be, in other words, really the person you really are, you will attract what is right for you. Yes, that's true. You say, maybe I have something that will last here. He says I'll get bored with him because he isn't exciting, as he keeps saying this to me over and over. And he says, I'm just his princess. Boring. Getting genuinely loved might become boring. In fact, the other day somebody said to me as I was talking to them, they said, well, I'm afraid if I get rid of all the conflict in my life and I don't worry about things all day, well, then I'll get bored. And I just burst into laughter, and I looked at him and I said, are you bored now? No. Well, you're getting loved right now and you're not worried about a darn thing. Not likely. There are lots of exciting people in the world who are utterly miserable. Artificial excitement is nothing. Remember Robin Williams? You couldn't get more interesting and exciting than that. Couldn't. Impossible. That there isn't enough energy to put into one brain or body. And what happened? Oh, he was so excited and interesting that he killed himself. And besides, you've already tried exciting and interesting with other men, and where did that go? You say he doesn't act or try to be anything other than the sweet man he is. Listen, kid, if you're tired of this guy, I'll take him. I'll auction him off to women in real love who appreciate what a good man is. He's not flashy or loud. You continue. I'm scared that I won't appreciate him, and I so want to appreciate him because of the way that I felt when I was ill in bed was like nothing I'd ever felt before, other than the time that you held me. Surely this is a good thing to be able to make that comparison of feelings. She was comparing the times that I've held her to the time when she was lying sick in bed, and nobody looks great when they have the flu and they're lying sick in bed. And he was just running around the house and just doing stuff for her, bringing her little drinks and patting her on the cheek and sitting next to her and talking to her. She says, is it okay to compare those two feelings? Yeah. Actually, that's the point. That was half the point of my loving you, so that you'd learn a reference point, that you would learn what it meant to be really cared for. Then you could find somebody who could love you at least somewhat like that, with his own flavor, with his own style, his own color, his own paintbrush, but with that underlying foundation of unconditional caring. She concludes, like, I was so vulnerable when I was sick and helpless, and yet I just felt so cared for and loved. Hallelujah, kid. Down with excitement, up with being cared for. Now we'll see where this goes. But if he ever goes to open his mouth about how he's boring or not exciting or how he needs to make more money, you're going to pull out what I'm saying here either in print or on video, and you're going to say, you want me to drag you through this again? Because he's got to get over this. George and Rachel, not their names, were partners. They were essentially, it's kind of an odd thing to refer to, but they were engaged for like 12 years. If you've been engaged for 12 years, you're not engaged, because the full phrase is engaged to be married. That's what engaged means. If you've been engaged for 12 years, then unless you were planning on living forever, then you're what's called fooling around. And that's all. It's not really an engagement. And for years and years, they argued about all kinds of things. They finally, recently, learned about real love. And it made him much more bold about asking for what he wanted. Time, attention, things that he had just been settling for far less than he was getting. And then he decided that he wanted her to be much more Christian than she had been. Much more Christian like he is. She didn't like that. She didn't like being told that she had to be more Christian. And they separated. He wrote her a letter and copied me to apologize for being demanding. No, it's not wrong to want your partner to be more Christian, if that's your standard for a partner, to share spiritual values. Not wrong. You have a right to set that as a standard for your partner. It only becomes a mistake if you set that standard for Rachel and tell her she has to become more Christian. So you have to decide whether having a Christian partner is sufficiently important that Rachel could not be your partner. You're not controlling her if you tell her what your standard for partnership is. You're only controlling her if you tell her she has to become more that way. So you've got to decide how important it is that your partner be Christian. We have to ask questions in the right order, and we don't. So what do you want in a partner? That's the question you ask first. You don't pick somebody and then try to change them to be what you want in a partner. If it's really important to you, well then it's just obvious that Rachel becomes ineligible because she doesn't meet that standard, which is okay. It doesn't make her less worthy, doesn't make her less lovable, but you need a partner who shares more spiritual values with you. Kind of like trying it for the NFL, if you don't mind a weird metaphor. The NFL has never come and forced me to try out for the NFL. I know, it's kind of stupid on their part, being the super athlete that I am. Nor have they forcibly tried to sign me to a multi-million-dollar contract. No, they simply set standards for what an NFL player can do. They watch college games. They put on NFL combines. They test players. And then, having set the standards, they invite to the combines and they invite to their tryouts the players who meet their standards. And that's what dating is all about. You set the standards for the partner you want. You're the only person who gets to do that. And if you don't set standards for a partner, then you just well throw darts at a phone book and just marry whoever the dart hits. So you set the standards, and then you find somebody who meets them, and you choose from among those rather than the other way around. I know a lady who wrote me about a situation that she was having with her family. And let's just, rather than giving them names, because it doesn't really matter, she has brother number 1 in the hospital, really sick. In fact, on a number of occasions, they were pretty sure he'd be dead by the next day, and then sure enough, he'd rally and he'd get better, but not well, and then he'd get sicker, and they'd think he was going to die. And his illness was serious enough and causing him enough pain and discomfort that they finally had to sedate him, which means essentially render him artificially unconscious with drugs because of the pain he was experiencing, and because he had a tube down his throat to breathe for him, and the whole circus was just too much for somebody to put up with while awake. So they sedated him. In comes brother number 2, who says, well, I just don't think he should be sedated. Well, the problem is if brother number 1 isn't sedated, he gets combative and difficult and starts pulling tubes out and swings at nurses, and he's a really big guy and scares the nurses. So once the nurses get scared, guess what they do? They put the needle in the little tube and they sedate him. So what do? They were arguing back and forth. It was just becoming a family civil war because brother 2 comes in and thinks he's a better doctor than all the doctors of brother 1. If brother 2 wants to experiment, or would like the doctors to experiment with his brother being less sedated so that he can have some time with his family before he dies, perhaps, then if you have a suggestion, you have to also offer some kind of solution. So if I were brother number 2, I might say to the doctors, could we experiment with a little less sedation? And if the doctors say, well, he gets kind of, violent and difficult, then I will be there to help restrain him. I will be there to help hold him down if the nurses need to do something with him. The reason I tell this story is not because you're likely to have one brother dying and another one coming in and being an idiot. It's that it's very common for us to say the words, I don't like. We say it all the time. Somebody proposes a plan. Well, I don't like that. I think we should do it differently. Unless you have a plan that's better, pretty much shut up. I don't like it is not a plan. My kids learned this at a really early age. We would propose something. Let's go out in the backyard and weed the garden. I don't know any teenage kids, who find weeding the garden exciting, and I understood that. But they learned really early on that I don't like it ain't a plan. And if you can come up with your own plan, great. So one of my kids, I would divide the garden into sections depending on their age and ability. And one kid would wait till his friends came over to go off and play and do something. And he'd say, oh man, I wish I could go, but I haven't weeded my patch of garden yet. And his friends, who either liked him a whole lot or weren't very smart, I'm not sure which, his friends would help him weed the garden, and he would end up doing, like 15% of the work that he would have had to do. I don't care. He came up with a plan to get the job done. It's just, instead of just saying, I don't like it. New subject. Here's somebody who wrote, I'll try to put this as simply as possible. I'm not sure if you're writing that because I'm really simple-minded or why. I have very few friends, and the one who is supposed to be my closest friend and that I periodically go out and do things with, like go to lunch and stuff. When we do go out for lunch, she immediately takes out her smartphone and begins to read her emails and go on Facebook and Twitter or whatever in the middle of our conversation. Whether we go out someplace or whether we go to her house, she does it every time that we're together and spends pretty much the whole time doing that. Even though we see each other these days not all that often, like every 2 to 4 weeks, sometimes less. That's unbelievably rude behavior. Now, here's a problem in today's society. It's become so common for people to do that, for people to go out and do something together, and then they just sit on their phones, that many people no longer consider it rude. And if everybody is in agreement that that's what they're going to do together, then that probably isn't a problem. The problem is that the people who sit there on their cell phones and text and email and all that stuff, and they're with other people, they don't get the agreement of other people before they do it. So if I go to a crack house and everybody is in the crack house to smoke crack and then lie on disgusting mattresses and be unconscious until they wake up, well then, if I go there and smoke crack and fall asleep on a disgusting mattress, then that would not be considered rude behavior, would it? Because we've all agreed that's why we're there. But the people who do this, they don't usually agree. And in your case, you certainly don't. And yet your friend does it anyway. So, you wouldn't go to people like this for a definition of rudeness for you. You get to define what is rude in a relationship with you. So, for example, some people might consider it not rude to make rude noises, I know brothers who every time they get together, I don't quite understand it, but they slap and punch each other and they think it's hysterical. I would not find that hysterical. But just because a lot of people believe something in common doesn't make it true. Most of the world believed in the 1400s that the world was flat. That didn't make it so. Rudeness is defined as that which is marked by a lack of gentleness or civility. It is meant to be the opposite of thoughtful and considerate. So rudeness is that which is thoughtless and inconsiderate. By any measure, to be with somebody for the purpose of being with them, not for the purpose of playing on your smartphone, and then to distract yourself with something else, anything else, without asking for the agreement of that other person, is rude. So your friend is being rude. She didn't get your agreement that that's what she was going to be doing when you two agreed to come and spend time together. If we don't take a stand about what is considerate and courteous, then the line of what is rude is going to keep moving to the point that eventually nobody cares about anybody. I mean, can you picture? I've been a science fiction reader since I was a little kid, and it's a very common theme in science fiction, in fact, really common, to predict what the future is going to be like. And there are countless futures predicted by science fiction writers where people do just sit around and communicate on computers, where in fact some people their minds are uploaded into computers and they quit being people at all. So let's begin right here. You visit your friend and you state before you go there that you're going for the purpose of being together, talking together. So for her to get on the phone is staggeringly thoughtless. That is a fact. You don't have to feel guilty about making that judgment. You continue. Last time she told me how worried she was about a niece that had a terrible cough at the beginning of the year. This was like weeks ago. And she suddenly remembered that she hadn't sent her a "how are you doing" email. Well, the niece had the cough weeks and weeks ago. And she stopped in the middle of our conversation and she sent the email. This woman is a bona fide communication, social media junkie. She's an addict. You got to decide whether you want to have a relationship with an addict. Clearly, just like if people go out for dinner and there's one person at the table who every single time you go out for dinner gets falling down, rude, loud, taking their clothes off, drunk, are you going to invite them to the next dinner? Well, if you do, now they're still rude, but now you're stupid. So you have to decide what you're willing to put up with in a relationship. We have confused a great volume of words for greater communication. They're not the same. Or connection. We defend ourselves sometimes by saying that we are multitasking, but this is obviously not true, since it's impossible, demonstrated by innumerable studies, to completely pay attention to two things at the same time. Rather, when we're on our phones, what we're doing is not multitasking, but consecutively tasking, which means that we're paying attention to one thing while ignoring the other, and then alternating back and forth, or simply moving down a line of things, paying attention to one and then the other and then another and then another. And because those other things are there to be paid attention to, we're distracted and we don't do anything well. You continue. I would love to have her attention during the rare and short time that we spend together, so can I request her not to take out her smartphone when we're together? Now you're at the touchy question. And this question is going to come up among friends more and more, the more that people use their smartphones and all the other gadgets that are available to them in public. You're going to learn something really important here. So listen slow. You may not like the answer you get. If you really want to learn how to have friendships, this is not the kind to have. So what would I say? I know, because I have done this with a number of people. I would say something like this. Susie, I don't know what her name is. I would love to visit you on Thursday. Now, you do this before you have finalized your plans to visit her, so that Susie knows what your desires are before she agrees to meet with you. So before you agree to meet on Thursday, you say, I'd love to meet with you on Thursday. I do have a concern. Notice I didn't say the word but. So as soon as people hear the word but, they know criticism is coming. When I visit, when we get together, you spend a lot of time on your phone. So when our visit's over, I feel like I haven't really even had a conversation with you, certainly not uninterrupted. I feel like I have visited you and every friend that you have texted or emailed during the time that we spent together. Now, I could be wrong about my expectations about a relationship, but I choose to need more of your attention than this. So if you're willing to put your phone away while I'm there, then I'm coming on Thursday and I'll meet you at 6 o'clock at Fred's for dinner or whatever it is. If you're not willing to do that, then I'll find something else to do. You don't have to say, well, then our friendship is over. That's kind of obvious, isn't it? And it's kind of aggressive. You just say, I'll find something else to do. Well, once she's heard what your standards of communications are, and she says no once, she's going to say no for the rest of your life, pretty much. I have done this many times with people when they've said, let's get together and do something. And I say, no problem. I do have some simple rules when I get together with people and do something with them. I get together with people to talk to them. And I don't do anything else. So while we're talking, I won't be playing pool. I won't be writing a blog. I won't be on my phone, and I would assume you wouldn't be doing any of those things either. It is rude. In fact, there have been a couple of times, it's been a while, but there have been a couple of times when I've been reading emails when my children have called me. And they've said, Dad, are you reading emails or doing something else? We know when people are distracted. And I say, not now. It's just inconsiderate. They won't put up with it from their own father. Why should you put up with it with a friend? So you'll discover one of the following, most of which you won't like. One, that you won't have the guts to say this to her. That would be very common, which means that you'll never learn how to have a truly honest and strong relationship. It will mean, however, and I'm not calling you this, I'm just saying if you make this choice, it will also mean that you're a coward and are satisfied with being walked on by other people. So if you choose not to tell her what your standards of getting together mean, then you don't get to complain about it later because you're inviting it. Two, another possibility. She will then tell you not to come if you set these standards. You'll learn that she values her many superficial texting relationships over an in-person relationship with you. You won't like that at first, but you'll discover that then you're freed up to find somebody who will have a genuine eye-to-eye, heart-to-heart relationship with you. A lot more fun. Third possibility. She'll make excuses. Well, I just answer the important ones, or you've already proven that's not true. She emailed her niece who was sick, in 1965 to see if she was better. And if you accept her excuses and visit her without her making the commitment that we just talked about to put the phone aside, then you get the consequence that I already described. You get walked on. You have no deep relationships. There are many business meetings all over the world where there's somebody standing at the door of the meeting and collecting the cell phone, smartphone, electronic devices, other than, like, say, iPads for presentations or whatever. They collect them at the door so that people can't be distracted. Or, fourth, she'll understand. She'll apologize. She'll agree to put her phone away. And that will improve your relationship immeasurably. You'll like that one. It will make you, though, a stronger person just for setting standards, and your relationship much more meaningful. We do not have to put up with superficial or rude relationships. Bottom line. This is a man, I know a man who's married to a woman who's been in real love for several years, and he's done little to nothing to grow himself. His wife has, but he's done kind of nothing. And he wrote to me, which surprised me because he doesn't have anything to do with anybody in real love. He says, my wife often calls people in real love, both women and men, to do what she calls, and he puts it in quotation marks, fill up with what she needs. Is that ethical? Is it ethical for you guys in real love to replace a spouse with other people? So, to those of you who are listening, do you hear the attacking? These aren't questions. These are accusations. They're sharpened spears. He says, is this ethical? Which of course, brings up the possibility that what we're doing is somehow unethical. He talks about you guys, which has been done from the beginning of time when we want to demean somebody, and we refer to you people, meaning whatever, another economic class, another race, people who speak another language, whatever. Notice he refers to what she calls fill up, in quotation marks, which implies that the real reason is yet to be determined, which is why he puts it in quotation marks. In other words, he's quoting her, but he doesn't believe it. Then he uses the phrase, replace a spouse, which of course everybody would disagree with. Yet another accusation. You people must be evil because you're replacing the spouse. This guy has already convicted real love of poisoning his marriage. And he just wants me to know that I'm a bad person. He's not really asking me any questions at all. He continues, I guess not quite satisfied with the degree of attacking and poisoning. He said, especially when you're suggesting that a woman call other men for love, isn't that dangerous grounds to be playing with? Just wondering. After a list of 12 consecutive attacks, he thought if he ended it with just wondering, that would turn them into not attacks. But I didn't respond to his attack at all. Instead, I wrote back, very reasonable question. And the reason I'm sharing that here is because you're going to have people ask you questions like this. And if you respond to attacks with attacks, it's like being invited to a mud fight. You might think you've won the mud fight, but look at yourself in the mirror when you get out of the mud pit. I said, very reasonable question. It really does sound suspicious, what your wife is telling you. It's very disarming. This is to you. I didn't write this to him. When someone attacks you and you acknowledge that their attack has possible merit. I continued with him. Let's try a metaphor. It's dinner time. Your wife works for a living and you've agreed to make dinner each night. But one night, you just don't have what it takes to prepare anything. So you take her by the hand, you put her in the car, and you go out to eat. You provide dinner, but you didn't cook it yourself. Is it ethical, to use your words, for you to just pass off your responsibility in a marriage like that? It really is that simple. The answers to your questions are that simple. You can't give what you don't have. If you're too tired, you're too tired. So you don't prepare the dinner. Your wife can't give you what she doesn't have. And she's doing what it takes to bring love back into your marriage. Just a sort of by the way for you, she's taking the risks and making the effort to do this while you're sitting back and doing nothing except criticize her. So you want her to be more loving, but then you're going to criticize what she's doing to become more loving while you do nothing to become more loving. People who just don't like a plan, but who have no plan of their own, don't have much of a case to make. Now, is it possible that this could be dangerous for your wife to be having conversations on the phone with men? Yeah, I suppose, but she interacts with men everywhere else in the day. I happen to know both of you. She works with men. She talks to men all day long. And the risk here is not just negligible, there isn't any risk. Not with your particular wife. She's just not like that. She's trying to make a difference in her life, and additionally is trying to benefit you by becoming a more loving person. So rather than question her motives and call them unethical and refer to the people that are trying to love her as you guys and referring to them as stealing your wife, you got a decision to make. Just one decision. This isn't complicated. Do you support real love or not? You clearly don't. I don't care. The question is this: do you trust her? Do you trust your wife? I can tell you that I do. I trust your wife completely. There's no way that she would be unfaithful to you. If you don't trust her completely, well, I do, then I'm kind of wondering why you stay with her. Or if you know her very well, what she's doing is courageous and faithful. You might consider seeing her in that way. I'm just saying. Or as you said, it's just a thought. Zoe is one of the children who's being raised with real love. She's now 2 and something, but this was written back when she was 14 months old. And her mother said, when I'd fall asleep while watching Zoe, she used to wake me by pulling on my hair, or I could just see my grandson Max doing this one, or she'd wake me up by dropping books on my face. Max would get up on something really high and just jump down onto me. I've been trying to teach her not to do this, but nothing's working. Then on her own, she started kissing me on the cheek to wake me up instead. Now, I have no idea where this came from. I never asked her for a kiss. I never showed her how to kiss. But she just started waking me up by kissing me on the cheek. She still pulls my hair on occasion, but significantly less. I swear to you, little kids want to do the right thing. We assume that they're just troublemakers and we have to tell them how to do absolutely everything and bark at them and nag them and repeat ourselves over and over. They want to do the right thing. Somehow this little 14-month-old kid figured this out. This is another little brief vignette about Zoe. Again, at age 14. A couple of weeks ago, Zoe learned the concept of storage. You know, she started being able to put things in bowls and take them out. So last week I decided she was ready to learn to put away her toys. 14 months of age, not too early at all to put away toys. I know parents who don't require their 17-year-old children to put away their toys and never have. So 14 months old. My daughter started requiring it of her kids when they were 11 months old. It's just not too early. So I decided she was ready to learn to put away her toys. I picked one day when we were stuck inside since I was sick, and every time she went to go get a new toy, I would pick her up and I would put her in front of the old toy and ask her to pick it up. She would just fuss, and I would repeat the process until she picked up the toy and handed it to me. Then I'd put the toy away because I decided that 2 steps, picking up the old toy and putting it away herself might be a little much to ask. Maybe so. I don't really have an opinion on the subject. By the end of the day, she pretty much understood that if she wanted to play with something, she had to pick up the previous toy and see to it that it was put away. After one day, and now we've only been doing this a week, honestly, not even that consistently, but yesterday, all I had to do was point and ask her to put something away, and she would put it back exactly where she got it. Today, she largely puts her toys away entirely on her own without being asked, and is proud of the fact that she can do it. Again, kids like to do the right thing. It makes them feel good. What creates happiness? Feeling loved, being loving, and being responsible. Kids like to be responsible, to feel responsible, and to be seen as responsible, even when they're 14 months old. And yet parents will tell me that it's way too much responsibility to expect a child to clean up his own room when he's only 14 years old. You can imagine how humorous I find that. Here's a woman who tried to make a relationship work with a guy who is a serious porn addict and also a cheater, has sex with other women, and also has absolutely no capacity for emotional connection. One would wonder why she's with this guy, which I asked her later, but anyway, she's with this guy. She said, I ended my relationship with my husband, we'll call him Fred, last week. I have felt like a masochistic doormat all my marriage, and now I feel like a doormat still because I told him that, because I agreed that I wouldn't tell anybody about his sex addiction. Now, she doesn't say this, she says this isn't in another place, but for the benefit of those who are listening, he goes around telling everybody that they broke up because of what a horrible person she is, and has a long list, it would almost have to be written for his memory to be this good, of her faults. And yet she agreed to never discuss the real reason, which is that he's a cheater and a porn addict. So honey, listen to me. He chose to be a sex and porn addict. And now you've agreed, like many codependent, pathetic, doormat women and some men, but in this particular case with sex and porn addict, you've agreed to cover for him. You've agreed to suffer the consequences of his choices by yourself. He'll tell everybody that your marriage just didn't work out, or he'll give them the long list of things wrong with you, because that's what addicts do. And all because you laid down in the middle of the road again. Now, you do what you want. I'm not telling you to put an ad in the newspaper. I'm not telling you to go out and tell everybody that he knows what he did. But if people ask you what happened, I suggest you tell them that it was because he was a porn and sex addict. You might be wondering, well, but that goes against what my mother said, which is if you can't say something nice, don't say anything nice at all. But see, he's telling the whole world that you're the witch and you're the reason that the relationship broke up. And you are suffering the consequences of his decisions. If you don't tell the truth, what happens is, it's not so much that you care what other people's opinions are, but you feel like a smaller person again. You feel trapped. You feel like, once again, you're carrying the load. You are lying for him. He's been lying to you your entire relationship, and now you're lying for him. It's just lies, lies, and more lies. And in the end, it confirms in your mind that you're a worthless piece of garbage. Makes you feel weak. You said it makes me sick and sad to tell people that he's a sex addict and cheated on me, and so I don't really want to do that. It's embarrassing, and it makes me feel sad. The other thing that people don't know is just how cruel he can be. His persona is all sweet. People don't see this other side of him that can be sadistic. So he goes around telling people that I'm a witch with a B, which is exactly why you have a right to tell some people the truth, especially the people who ask you about it. And you just said part of the real reason why you don't want to tell people is that you're embarrassed because it makes you look like a fool. But his addiction isn't due to you. His addiction has nothing to do with you. Every sex and porn addict's wife thinks that if she had been more attentive, if she had been prettier, if she had been sexier, if she had been whatever, this wouldn't have happened. That is never the case. Because the satisfaction, the decrease in pain that addicts get from using porn and sex with other women has no relationship to having sex with you at all. It doesn't even light up the same part of the brain. Another thing, you say. The other day I saw him at a place we've often gone out to eat. And already, within days of our breaking up, he had another girlfriend. And it felt so hurtful. It felt so hurtful. You're just tugging at my heartstrings now to see him with another woman. Honey, you gotta be kidding me. It's understandable that you'd be hurt, but why? Really? I'm asking why. He's an addict, completely incapable of loving, but you're hurt seeing him with someone else. You'd think you'd be celebrating. It makes sense to feel some sadness, to grieve the fact that, you lost not just a relationship, but you lost the notion, the dream of the relationship, what you hoped the relationship would be. But this guy's been nothing but destructive to you. You need to see that, and you won't be as hurt. It really makes no sense at all to be sad that he's gone. And I'm not telling you not to be hurt. I'm just telling you it doesn't make sense. And if you tell yourself that enough times, you'll eventually get to the point where you realize that you're being nuts to miss him. You continue. It's frightening to me that he could be so cruel to me. Well, he's gone now. Makes me sick to the core. What makes you sick is that you allowed him to treat you that way. It really is just as you said. You say that he's a stranger to me, and this is just disturbing. It disturbs me that I'm as sick as I am. Good for you that you're finally waking up to that, because you keep attracting sick men into your life. It's really almost too much to bear, you continue. And I can only take it in little increments. It's that feeling of being crazy and feeling that I can't trust my own perceptions of reality. You can't. You have been so miserable and so unloved for so long that you can't trust your perceptions of reality. Hence, your need to really feel real love from some people. You've never had that before. So this emotionally crippled man fooled you, tricked you like you were an infant with simple attention and charm, like a child molester offering a child a piece of candy before they molest them. You were little more than a child. In the future, if you get enough real love in your life, you'll have the real thing to compare other relationships to. Like I said to a lady earlier in this chat. You said, I know it's also my whole lifetime of being with people who are unloving and cruel to me. I have just flashed on when I was raped when I was 15. My boyfriends were vicious to me and blamed me. And when I was raped, I got no support from my family. They blamed me for the rape. My mother even told me that she would have preferred if I'd been murdered. The police were unkind to me, blamed me for it, said that, I'm the one that instigated it, and clearly got pleasure from my describing the details of the rape. I went to report it to the chief, and he laughed at me. So this is a pattern, honey. It's a lifelong pattern. You've been treated in unloving ways all your life, which prepared you perfectly for a relationship with this guy. You think you're worthless? He saw it flashing across your forehead. I'm worthless, please use me. And he went, okay. But now that's over. It's time to feel loved and quit being treated like garbage. You finally conclude with, it had to come to this for it to finally end. For me to realize just how completely screwed up he is, I would parenthetically add, all this had to happen for you to realize how screwed up you are. That he's poison for me. I now have zero hopes of our ever reconciling. Hallelujah. I feel sad and overwhelmed with all of this, but I also feel much more free now. That's what I'm talking about. Until you see your part in this, that you've been trained all of your life to accept relationships like this, you'll never be free. Your next relationship will be just like this one, except the guy will have a different name and a different face. But here you are saying, I feel more free, more somehow spacious inside. I feel like my heart has enlarged. It has. More quiet and peaceful. I know with all my heart that this has been a blessing to me. Well, we'll see. It will be a blessing to you if you use this as a motivation to get more of the real thing. If all you do is bemoan the fact that it happened, you'll do it again. You said, I just need to assimilate this, grow from it, good call, and expand into who I really am. So honey, let's summarize, short, real short. Get the real thing. Feel loved by people who have it to give. And then you can do three things. You can choose to be happy now. You can leave the past behind. And you can create a great future. That's what real love in the present does for you and for all of us. We'll see you next week.